Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of the Heart Intelligence Summit. If you could just type on the chat how you're feeling today and what was the biggest takeaway from the last 2 days. And if you can hear me, that would be wonderful for me to learn that. So I have a little bit of feedback before I get going with. I'm going to open the chat box so I can make sure that I see if anybody is able to type. Jacqueline is feeling empower. Well, that's actually a perfect word. This is about her intelligence. So we do want to tap into the feeling. And empower is the energy that we want to navigate ourselves into so we can own the power within. That's actually a perfect. I am feeling empowered. And I assume that everyone can hear me, right? That's why Jacqueline was able to respond, I assume. So I am going to today's the last day, although I'm going to have a bonus plus Q&A on Saturday. In that bonus training on Saturday at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, I am going to facilitate a little bit of heart center meditation so you can experience how it feels to feel empowered and to truly allow the gatekeeper, which is the mind, to open the heart. Now, before I dive into the topic of today, today's November 11th, which means it's 1111. Now, if you are living in Eastern time, right now where I'm at is 8 o'clock, a little past 8 o'clock, but it's 3 hours ahead. So when the time becomes 11 o'clock at 11, 1, when that one aligns, you really want to stay in the energy of the heart. So if you're living in this Pacific Standard Time, that's a little bit later. But when that aligns and when you are in your heart, there's a lot of good manifestation that you can make it happen. So I just wanted to talk about that before I forget. So what I'm going to do today is to sort of bring everything that I have been talking about together. So there are a couple of stuff. It's going to be sort of like a review of what we discussed yesterday and Tuesday, but in a way that you can connect the dots, right? So I'm going to start with the reflection. So the day 3 reflection is, if you could do anything you wanted, how would you be living? And then what belief do you need to shift in order to follow that heart's desire? Now, if I can remind you how I started this summit on Tuesday, at the very beginning, I asked everyone to sort of imagine your soul arriving on this earth plane. And then what if each and every soul had a certain mission to express? You can explain and answer this from a different standpoint, but one of the objectives of the life in the earth plane is to grow, right? So if you could imagine a plant or flower, if you plant the seed in the soil, it just wants to grow. And that's how I want everybody to begin thinking and imagining us. Like, what if the soul that arrived here is the seed of that expression that we are supposed to and designed to express. Flower has uniqueness and aliveness and joyfulness, and that is the process of growth, right? So if you go into the spiritual space, I even had this one of the answers when I was posting something where there are a lot of people who believe that the purpose of life is just to be. And I understand the perspective, but there needs to be a certain growth, right? You don't want to just be being in a seed. So the beingness to fully connect with the present moment and to um, get in touch with a deeper experience is a process. So, like for instance, in the personal development industry, and especially when the personal development meets energy, um, we talk about happiness is never a goal. Like it's interesting that when I ask people, a lot of people tell me, what is it that you really want? People tell me, I just want to be happy. Or some people, I think I was introducing on Tuesday that a lot of people who are seeking peace of mind. And then peace of mind comes from the lack of peace of mind, which is just the activity of the mind, right? So when people are seeking peace, sometimes people assume that there's a lack of peace in the world. But depending on how you choose to think and how you position yourself as far as the perspective, you are able to create a peace of mind because you are the awareness that can control that gatekeeper. So, one of the main things that I'm going to be talking about today, connecting all the dots, I'm going to be talking about the difference between the soul and the self. And in order to live the heart's desire, which is the main topic of today, the essential key is to understand the self. It's interesting because it's not the heart that we need to understand in order to express our heart's desire. It's the self and the mind that we need to understand because the heart is just a gate. And I think I mentioned on day one that, soul and the body doesn't go to a different state of being, like angry, happiness. That is the activity of the mind that reflects in the body as a sensation, but the body is not choosing that. The mind is selecting that, and whatever the experience that we have within our body is the reflection of the mind. So soul and the body, they just are in the moment, and they're curious. They want to play in this playground called three-dimensional physical world, including the body, right? And the mind is truly the key. Like for instance, a lot of people use the term mindset, and the word mindset seems to be rather overused today. And when we go into a deeper dimension of spirituality, the soul, we assume that the term mindset is not deep enough or not comprehensive enough. Um, I went there and then I came back. It is truly the mind, and not in a sense that you have a higher mindset or lower mindset. It's not like that, but how are we utilizing the tool? Called the mind is a tool because we're not the mind, we have the mind. We're not the body, we have the body, right? So I don't know if you had a chance to watch the Bob Proctor's develop your imagination YouTube video that I sent to um, email. Well, I don't think I posted that on Facebook group. I'm gonna do that. But towards the end of the video, he was talking about uh, nobody will ever see you. The people will only see your body and the great work that you do. So the work that you do that you can see, the others can see in the physical world, is your soul's expression. And it is my deepest desire for people, for each and every one of us to be able to tap into that, tap into what matters to us the most, and to fulfill the mission of the soul that you arrive here to fulfill. And to be able to do that, we need to um, embrace the heart's desire. And how do we do that? We don't really need to work on the heart. Like, the soul just is, the heart also just is, and the body just is. It's the mind that gets in the way. Because what if I think I introduced a little bit this concept of we call opening the heart, closing the heart. And it's the mind which, who is the gatekeeper that opens and closes. Does that make sense? So when we begin understanding the concept of self, which is going to be the main topic today, and how that relates to the soul, and how what do we need to do? Because one of the, as you can see here in the bullet points, the key shifts you need to make for the heart to lead, nothing to do with the heart. It has everything to do with the mind and the self. And when we are able to understand what the mind is actually doing and what is self, and then when we understand here emotional mind and infinite mind, when we understand that your feeling is the seat of the heart, the emotional mind is the is a part of the infinite universal intelligence. When the heart vibrates in a certain state as a feeling and emotion, that is connected with the whole thing. So that's why the law of attraction works. The vibration is the primary law, and the secondary law is attraction. So how the vibration is taking place based on how the heart is resonating based on what you think and how you're connecting, how the heart is open by letting that soul to be expressed. So that's a little bit deeper topic, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's start with that reflection. So if you could do anything you wanted, how would you be living? And then this question really means what it means. If you could do anything you wanted, how would you be living? And then what we want to do as a mental work is to remove all the obstacles that gets in the way. Like it means that I'm inviting you to eliminate all the current situation that you think that is blocking you or preventing you from reaching where you want to go, how you want to be living. And in what belief do you need to shift in order to follow that heart desire? So one of the things that we talk about is that in this conscious manifestation field is that the the outside situation often prevents people from taking action or getting to the next level, right? And one of the things that I talked about yesterday extensively is that there are three ways to think: past, present, outside in, present, future. And outside in is that, right? The outside situation is in a certain way, and then I cannot do that. I'm not able to, I need to wait for the outside to change. But when we truly begin understanding that manifestation, I'm going to draw my using my whiteboard in a moment. The outside situation that is making you stuck is caused by your thinking and by your inside. So, and then you might ask, well, how do I change my inside when the outside is not is blocking me from taking a certain action? You shift the way you think from outside in or from past present into your present future, because no matter what situation, external physical circumstance you might be in, you're free to imagine whatever you want to. Does that make sense? You're free to imagine and choose your thoughts however you want to. And I'm not saying, yesterday I talked about many people let the feeling body that comes from the past experience habitually allow them to think thoughts, right? And I just want to make a little bit of distinction because there are two things. I'm not saying that when you are not feeling well, immune system wise, or you fell or you're injured and you're in physical pain, those feelings of the body will affect your thinking, right? You need to take a break, you need to rest. But I'm more talking about the psychological feeling. Because somebody told you something, you felt hurt, and that feeling and the past trauma affects your habitual thinking. That is something that you can flip the order and to utilize the free will, the power to choose thought, anything you want to, and begin reprogramming to change the feeling. Does that make sense? I want to just make sure that, uh, feeling, not letting the feeling to impact your thinking. I'm not talking about the immune system or injury wise feeling in the body not affecting. Well, when that happens, you still can maintain the power within and to choose to think empowering thoughts. But I'm more talking about this habitual, ongoing way of thinking that people are trapped by, that you can change that. So I just want to share that as a little bit of background. And, I was contemplating today what would mean for me if I don't use this whiteboard today. And I wanted to kind of, oh, sorry, I wanted to kind of, I'm just trying to move this thing. I wanted to kind of try not to use it. And I decided that that is not possible. So I'm going to use it. So I would like you to pay close attention to what I'm going to begin drawing and explaining, because the next, and I'm going to go nonstop the next 10 to 15 minutes, reviewing what we have covered the last 2 days, and then going a little bit deeper. But when you begin understanding the sequence, the relationship between everything that I'm going to draw, everything is going to change. And as I said, every single time when I say something, even though you heard this yesterday, I want you to listen to this and then feel this as if you have never heard and then you're listening to and watching this for the first time. Well, you have seen this yesterday. So you can imagine that it's your first time. Fifth dimension is your spiritual plane. Fourth dimension is your intellectual plane. And the third dimension is your physical. We live in 3 planes of understanding. This is where the soul lives. This is where the intellect, the mind lives. This is the physical, spiritual, intellectual, physical. The language of the soul is knowing. Knowing happens through the heart. It doesn't happen through your rational mind. Knowing. And there's a little bit of being. So when you say being and knowing, that is the language of the soul. Language of the mind is thinking. And this thinking impact the feeling. The language of the physical is your 5 senses. See, hear, smell, taste, touch. So right here, I want you to begin sort of entertaining with the idea that how much of the time are we living being dependent on the 5 senses? How much of the time are we aware of what we're thinking intentionally, or that thinking is just happening on an autopilot mode? How much of the time in the moment every single day are we guided by the knowing and the being? Yeah. Now, you have the mind and you have the body. And since this is a heart intelligence summit, let's say this is the feeling body that is mainly is the heart. So thinking is the activity of the mind that always impact the feeling. Yeah. Now, I know that the body resides in the physical plane, but the feeling of the body resides in the intellectual plane. And the thinking and the feeling always communicate one another. There are 3 ways to think: past, present, and often the feeling contains our past. That's number 1, past, present. Number 2, outside in, letting the outside situation that we interpret through our five senses to cause us to think, oh, this person said something that's a five senses from the ear. We interpret and that cause us to think a certain thought. Number three is present future, and you imagine based on what you want. Yeah, there are three ways for us to create thinking. The feeling tends to hold on to the past, and in order to begin creating the future in the present moment, we want to begin free up our thinking from the past that is not serving us and from the outside that is not serving us. Now, one of the things that I mentioned is that, there's a polarity in life, positive and negative. And I like to call it empower, because empower means to be in the energy of power. In the spiritual plane, all the things that we're seeking in life, such as happiness, I don't think I'm able to write everything. I'm just going to write happiness. I think there are two S's, right? Happiness. One S? I don't know. I cannot spell now. Freedom, two E's. So things like happiness, joy, freedom, love, peace, all those things that people are ultimately looking for is already in the spiritual plane. So there's no lack in the spiritual plane. There's only abundance. It's complete. It's perfect. When people talk about perfection, that's what it means. There's a perfection in the spiritual plane. So there's only E. There's only empowerment. Now, in the physical world, we see both things that we feel empowered, that's a law of polarity, and things that we feel disempowered. And then the mind can choose to go to that empower thought that creates empower feeling, or disempower thoughts that creates disempower feeling. The way that we humans are designed to live, considering integrating all these three planes of understanding, is that we're a spiritual being having a physical body and gifted with intellect. We are here to demonstrate, we're here to play, we're here to grow. We are here to create and then enjoy and to have fun. So I'm hesitating a little bit using the term create, because here's the thing, right? In the spiritual plane, everything is already created. Nothing is lacking. Nothing is lacking. Everything is already created. So one of the three practices that I was suggesting people, and I didn't get into too much yesterday, is gratitude, right? So in the group, I'm doing the gratitude challenge right now. So what's good about gratitude? So when you get into that energy and feeling, gratitude is a feeling, is the activity of the heart. We don't think gratitude. We think about something and we always feel gratitude, because when we feel gratitude, we're tapping into the energy of completeness, which is the energy of the soul, which is the expression in the spiritual plane. So when you feel not just a little bit, but overwhelming, deep, profound gratitude, you feel expansive and you feel sortering, you feel a fullness in your energy and the sacredness, and you feel like there's nothing that's missing in there. Does that make sense? So the more we can practice, and that is who we are, that feeling of profound, overwhelming gratitude, the fullness and expansiveness is who we are in the spiritual plane already. So the more we tap into that energy, we are reminding ourselves to be in that state of the soul. That's number one, right? And number two practice is to practice worthiness. That's something that I'm going to be focusing on today, because the worthiness has to do with the self, not with the soul, but the self. because the soul doesn't care worthiness at all, because it's just is. Yeah. So one of the things that we really need to understand is the self in the physical world, which is who we think we are, only lives in our mind. So I'm gonna because so this is this, right? I'm gonna erase the fifth dimension. Sorry, this is the most important dimension probably, but I'm gonna erase this, right? Because I need a little bit of room. I think Craig is right. I need a bigger whiteboard, and I'm gonna erase the third dimension, and I want to focus on the fourth dimension, because the fourth dimension, the intellectual plane, is what we want to focus on. So I'm just gonna boom, erase this, right? Okay, so this is your fourth dimension, the intellectual plane, and this is the plane of that self. What do I mean by that? This is something that I have been emphasizing, maybe studying 2 months ago. Maybe it was the belief training that I did. So in the develop your imagination video, Bob says nobody would ever see you. They only see your body and the great work that you do. Nobody would ever see you. The person that you're seeing through the mirror every single day is not you. It is your body. It is your body, right? And the real you is the soul. But there's another you that you can construct in your mind, and that is the self. The real you is the soul, but there's another you that you can construct in yourself, in your mind, which is the self. So who you are at an essential level is absolute and doesn't require any change because it's complete. But when the soul gets thrown into this physical world, we automatically, we are gifted something called the mind. The mind. We are gifted two things, the mind and the body. We, the soul, are gifted in when we come to this earth plane, two things, the mind and the body. And they are not ourselves. We are borrowing our mind and the body temporarily in this lifetime. And then automatically, when we borrow the mind in this earth plane, we get to think. We receive an ability and a capacity to think thoughts. And then we, using that thinking mind and the feeling body, we start constructing a concept of you in your mind, in your thinking, and in your body, in your feeling. And that becomes a way that we navigate through this earth plane. Yeah. So there is, the soul is the real you. The self is the temporary you that you are expressing in this physical plane. But here's the key. At this moment, this might change because people who have been working with me know that my awareness keeps expanding and shift almost every single month, or if not every single week. So some of the stuff you might heard this, and then some of the stuff, the explanation is new. So when we understand that we live in these three planes of understanding, spiritual, intellectual, and physical, and then we're here on this earth plane, what is the whole point of it? The whole point of it is to play and to grow and to create what's already created in the spiritual plane, using the intellectual mind psychologically into the physical world. Now, what does it mean to use the mind, the psychology, and the intellect to manifest and create in the physical world. It means that we have this thing called the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, which means whatever we hold in our screen of the mind, and then when we impress that thought and the image into our subconscious mind, the heart, because the subconscious mind is a part of the infinite universal intelligence, the energetic fields that resonating and harmonizing, and we manifest circumstance, environment, situation, result, and outcome into the physical world. So the whole gift and the tools that we receive, the mind and the body and the thoughts and the feeling, thinking and ability to feel, is a toolbox to shift the vibrational frequency to manifest into the physical world. And using psychology and intellectual mind, we manifest in the physical world. But what does that really mean when I say that your temporary you is only living in your mind? So here's a good way to understand. Intellectually, the self only lives in your mind. So when you close your eyes for a moment, and when you shut off your vision, and you probably need to hear me to be able to navigate your imagination. But when you close your eyes, you start turning your attention inwards, right? And that place that you are now living, let's say if you're closing your eyes following my instruction, it's very dark and you cannot see anything, right? But that space is you, the self, the temporary you. Yeah. And then you can begin imagining things. You can begin thinking stuff, and you can feel the feeling, the thoughts and the imagery, and then the words that you use that consist of, letters that has meaning, which is, words are just, saying things out loud, right? With the thoughts coming out loud, and the feeling, that combination of all those is the self. So let me just share a little bit, uh, come back to this past, present, and present, future, and then outside in. Where many people I feel that are stuck is the self is a temporary you. And we tend to carry our past experience and the trauma stuff in our feeling body, and we assume that we need to change that in order to release and to be able to move forward. And then notice that a lot of things that we store in our feeling that comes from the past is just a product and the energy based on what happened from the outside in the past, and we interpret that way, and then we attach a certain meaning. Often trauma is a negative meaning, a disempowered meaning, and that is controlling our thinking. Yeah. However, what I want to point out, which is very crucial people, is that it's not that you need to change yourself. You only need to change how you're seeing yourself in your imagination. Does that make sense? So many people tends to assume that the feeling of not good enough, the unworthiness, the painful emotional thing that is in the body is me, and I need to change that. And yeah, when you let go of the energy that might have been stored in your body, you probably feel released and feel better and have an ability to think a little bit more clearly. But if you keep thinking and seeing yourself in a certain way, including that you're believing that you have a trauma that you need to let go, you're seeing yourself so. Does that make sense? I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to say this a couple of times because sometimes it puzzles people. If you see yourself as somebody who needs to release something because of the past experience, that's how you're seeing yourself in your mind. It's not the person who you think that has a trauma that needs to change, but the person who is seeing in your imagination is what needs to be changed the way you see it. So okay, I think a couple of people might be confused. So I think it's the best way to explain is what I often say. The self is in your mind. And there's a certain way that you're seeing yourself currently based on your past experience. A lot of people try to change this you, this second you, how I see myself, the you, myself. It's not this that we need to change. We need to change how we see in our imagination. Does that make sense? So a lot of people are trapped by trying to change yourself, who you see as somebody who has trauma, who you see as somebody who have a negative experience in the past. But if you're seeing that, that is what you're going to create in your imagination. So it's not that you need to change yourself, but you only need to how you see. So that begins with the thoughts. That begins with, I'm not rejecting that you do not have that feeling from the past. Probably we all do. But when we see ourselves, so we get trapped by it. So this is becoming a puzzle, right? A little bit. So this is the reason that focusing on the mind is so essential, because the mind is what we can imagine. The mind is what we can think, right? And let's say if I tell you, okay, experience thinking in your body, and then you get confused, right? Because the experience that we often have is that when we think, there's something activity in our brain, right? Now, if I tell you, okay, can you experience feeling in your head? And then you get confused because the feeling is something that happens in our body and in our heart, right? So what if the heart and the feeling, the seed of the feeling, the heart, is always unconditional, meaning that when the heart is unconditional, it means that it's always open. The heart doesn't know how to close. It's always open to express the soul's expression. And the gatekeeper, which is the mind, is what covers the opening of the heart. So that's what it means by, if you begin seeing yourself differently by thinking different thoughts and by picturing yourself as somebody who you want to see yourself as, you are allowing the gatekeeper to little by little navigate its action and activity into opening the gate, opening the gate, opening the gate. If the mind is not doing the work of changing how we see ourselves, there's no opening there's not anybody who can open the heart, the gate. Does that make sense? So we call this self-image. How we see ourselves in our mind is self-image. And then how we feel about ourselves is self-esteem. So the self-esteem is the worthiness, right? So the worthiness comes from how we interpret or what happened in the past that we perceive in our thinking, and then we store that as a feeling. But in order to change this self-esteem, the feeling of not good enoughness or unworthiness that a lot of people are trapped by, we need to first practice seeing ourselves differently in our mind. And then whatever we see in the screen of the mind, and then through repetition, we impress that new feeling in the body into the heart, we start shifting the self-esteem and the way we feel. But if we try to let go of the energy and feel differently without deciding to see ourselves differently in our mind, it will be a vicious cycle of, oh, I feel a little bit better because I was able to let go of my energy, but I keep seeing myself in the same way, and we will not go anywhere in a permanent way. So does that make sense? I hope this makes sense. Oh, Amelia is saying, is this sort of like a higher self meditation? Well, she's saying makes sense. Okay, good. So this is the first portion of today that I really want people to understand, that in order to honor the heart desire, we need to feel worthy. We not only need to feel the gratitude to tap into the fifth dimension, but we need to feel worthy because our self, the intellectual self in the past, chose to shut off, closing the heart, feeling unworthy. A lot of people have that, right? So what we need to do is to begin shifting the sense of self by practicing seeing ourselves differently, because the self only resides in our mind. So it's a mental activity that we need to engage in. Now, here's the second point, the second half, and the meat and the juice of it, which I love talking about so much. This activity of seeing yourself as the ideal version. So let's say, we're talking about what is your heart desire, and what is the life that you want to be living, right? That is the sort of like question today. And you start fantasizing, you start dreaming, and you start seeing yourself as the ideal version. Some people call this best self, some people call the optimum version of you, right? A lot of people wants to experience that life, and that best self version comes from your desire, which is the urge of the soul wanting to express. Yeah. Now, and then I think I talked about, why do we desire what we do? That's because the soul is seeking that, right? So it's interesting that what you truly want and what you desire, you don't need to have any reason, because that's what the soul is wanting to express. Like when you look at the flower blossoming, you don't ask them, why do you want that? Does that make sense? That's an interesting question, actually. It's just want, right? It's just the nature of the universe. It's the nature of the natural world to want to express, to want to grow, to want to demonstrate, right? And then the specific thing, you can identify it, but you want what you want because you want it. You want what you want because you want it, and you desire what you desire because you desire it. That's the reason. So so the process of creating this ideal version of ourself by eliminating all the disempowering thinking, because none of the disempowering thoughts or image about ourselves will help us to feel worthy, right? So by practicing how we see ourselves, engaging in this empower thinking and an empowering image of ourselves in our mind's eyes, using the present future way of creating an image in your mind, and in practice transferring that into the feeling, what we're doing is that the self in the intellectual mind is moving closer to the essence and the expression of the soul. Does that make sense? I said that the desire of who you want to become and desire of wanting something does not need to have any reason, because that's just an expression and the urge of the soul. So intellectually, when we choose to become somebody following that desire and using the mind and then impressing that feeling into the heart, what we are actually doing through this conscious manifestation process is that the more we engage and practice seeing yourself in our ideal version, that activity is actually the activity of aligning the self with the soul. And the more the self aligns closer to the divine version of ourself, which is the soul, we're allowing the energy to flow to and through us. And then we're manifesting what's already created in the spiritual plane through the psychological process into the physical material world. And that's what we're here to do, each and every one of us. Whatever that vehicle is, my vehicle is teaching and coaching. You might be an artist, you might be an author, you might be an actor or actress, you might be an entrepreneur. Whatever that gift and that talent and whatever that is that's inside of you that is seeking expression is what we want to honor through the understanding of the mind, because the mind is what allows the gate to open or close. And when we begin practicing attention, gratitude, and worthiness, and tap into that empower state, and then thinking positively, and then seeing ourselves as an ideal version, we're moving the self closer and closer to the energy of the soul. And that's when the magic happens, energy flowing to and through us, and that manifests in the physical world. That is how we can live our heart's desire. In order for us to live our heart's desire, we must understand the mind. And we must understand that the self resides only in our imagination, in our thinking that impact our feeling. And then when that self begins through our awareness, because if I can remind you, the mind and the body is we're renting temporarily in this lifetime. And then the awareness that is you can choose any thought or can imagine anything that we want to imagine utilizing the mind. That is the self. Now, when the self can get closer and closer to the soul, that's when the playground gets used in an optimum way, including the whole functioning and the mechanism of what it means to be a human being who has this prefrontal cortex that we can become aware of our awareness that not any other animals have. And we become a true creator based on our desire. That is what it means by when we say we are the creator. When we understand the mind, the function of the mind, and the relationship between the mind and the subconscious mind, the relationships between the soul and the mind and the body, the five and the fourth and the third, we become an artist. We become a playful creature following our heart's desire to express our soul's expression. So, having that in mind, what I want you to entertain today is, if you could do anything you wanted, how would you be living? And then when you face this question, I don't want you to think about any of the current situation, but if you could do anything you wanted, how you want to be living. And you want to sort of stay in that question and begin writing anything you want. And then what belief do you need to shift in order to follow that heart's desire? Belief is what causes us to think a certain thought. Belief is a extension of how we see ourselves. So in order to let that expansion of our dream comes to on a paper, we need to begin sort of shifting the belief. You know, when you have some limitation in your thinking that comes from our beliefs. So, okay, that is all, everybody. So I think I was able to pull and bring everything together. On Saturday, I'm gonna come back to do a Q&As and a little bit of meditation and a little bit of bonus training, things that I have not been able to cover. I can just, this can be a longer session, but there's a little bit of attention span. So bring those questions, please. And if you're not able to attend the Saturday 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can email me the question, or I will post a on the Facebook group. If anybody have any question, and you can sort of ask that question on that thread, and I will make sure to answer on the call. That is it, everyone. I know you might need a little bit of time to process. So this is going to be available for 7 days replay. So it's going to be sent via email or Facebook group. And that is it. Have an awesome day, and I will see you hopefully on Saturday.